The Prime Minister faces a backlash from his own MPs over plans to raise national insurance to pay for social care reforms in England. Labour has already ruled out supporting the plans, but ministers say families desperately need changes to the system.
This is a change that is long overdue. It won't be easy. There is no right answer that everybody will find consensus around. Every single possible solution that the Chancellor has will have pros and cons.
We'll be looking ahead at the options for the Prime Minister as MPs return to Westminster. Also on the programme, the Taliban claims control of Panjshir Valley, the last part of Afghanistan to resist them, but rebel forces say they're still there. Back to school for millions more children in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but will it spark a rise in COVID cases? Making eye contact for the first time, the conjoined twins separated after rare surgery.
Oh, it's got to be quick.
And wickets fall at the Oval as England chase a big total to try and secure victory against India.
Coming up in sport later in the hour on the BBC News channel, chaos in Brazil as last night's World Cup qualifier against Argentina's abandoned. Health officials confronting UK-based players on the pitch over COVID breaches.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. MPs return to Westminster this afternoon following the summer break, with the funding of social care and the NHS at the top of the agenda. Some Tory MPs have expressed anger at reports of an increase in national insurance contributions to help fund social care in England, which would break a Conservative manifesto pledge not to raise taxes. Labour is also opposing a rise in NI. It's expected that an extra £5.5 billion will be announced for the NHS. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
For years, governments of various persuasions have not got round to sorting a new system for social care in England. It is complex, controversial and vastly expensive. Should there be a cap on the bill anyone should face? Which tax should be put up to pay for it? It appears the government does want a cap and a hike in national insurance.
This is a change that is long overdue. It won't be easy. There is no right answer that everybody will find consensus around. Every single possible solution that the Chancellor has will have pros and cons. I don't know the detail of what he's about to propose, but I do know that this is hard. We need to be honest with the public about that, and then we need to be ready for the debate that lies ahead and to put in place those reforms.
Here's one reason why it's hard for the government. Have a look at this I've pulled out of the archive from before the last election.
Here's the kicker. Here's the ready book. We can do all these things without raising our income tax, VAT or national insurance contributions. That's our guarantee.
Here's the kicker now. That guarantee looks like it's about to be shredded because
the simplest way to raise large amounts of money is through increasing the rates of the three main taxes. So national insurance is one, income tax is the most obvious alternative. There's also VAT as the third.
Labour and plenty of Conservatives say putting up national insurance in particular will tax the less well off to subsidise the better off.
The government has got to rethink this. They say they want to level up across the country, but in fact they would be hitting many families in constituencies like mine in the Midlands, but also in the North, hard for not getting those improvements in the kind of care. And in fact, they would be seeing greater taxes on businesses too, just when they are struggling.
It seems to me that looking at income tax, which of course is a far less regressive tax, and it's a tax that everyone who has income pays. Let's not forget that those people who are retired, even if they have a relatively high income, won't pay national insurance.
MPs are returning to Parliament, and a row is brewing already. Reeta, the briefing for Westminster reporters by Downing Street has just concluded in the last half hour or so, and it's fair to say there weren't vast, dazzling, piercing rays of light shed on this policy in that briefing. Instead, it's been dribbled out in unofficial briefings over the last couple of days, leaving plenty of space for critics to jump all over what we think the government's plans might look like. One thing I can tell you is we're expecting this afternoon an announcement on the broader funding of healthcare of £5.5 billion to try and help the NHS with the COVID backlog and the winter pressures to come.
Yes, many thanks. Chris Mason there reporting in Westminster. Let's speak now to our business editor, Simon Jack. And Simon, how are businesses responding to these reports of a possible rise in national insurance?
Well, it's worth pointing out, Reeta, that it's not just the employee that will pay a higher national insurance, if that's what we're going to get, but potentially also the employer. And while some big business leaders I've spoken to said, you know what, in and of itself, putting 1p on national insurance for the employers would not, for example, change their mind whether they're going to hire an extra person. Wider business groups have said, look, it's just one of a number of other burdens which are coming at the worst possible time. You're talking about businesses which are struggling with labour shortages, which are demanding higher wages, and this would be one additional thing. The CBI, for example, says it comes after a crippling 18 months, and we would urge the government to explore all alternative funding options to explore before enforcing what amounts to a tax on UK jobs. And as they say, we are emerging from the biggest economic downturn in living memory in 300 years, and putting this extra burden alongside a few years where we've seen the living wage, the national minimum wage rise, saying that many businesses, particularly small ones, may struggle with just another additional cost, and that may be a disincentive for them to rehire at a time when they're finding it very hard to find new workers.
Simon, thank you. Our business editor, Simon Jack, there. Well, our social affairs correspondent, Alison Holt, is with me now. Alison, what more do you know about what's likely to be announced?
Well, we hope to see the details soon, but what we are expecting is that a cap will be introduced to limit the amount of money that any one person pays towards their care. We know there have been arguments over what level that should be set out, whether it should be 50,000 or 80,000, but it would then mean that someone would pay for their care up to the top of that cap, and then they could turn to the local authority for help. At the same time, we're expecting the amount of money someone can keep to be increased. At the moment, if you have savings or assets of £23,250 or more, then you pay for all your care. We expect that to be you to be allowed to keep more. At the moment, whether you live in a council house that you've bought under the Conservatives' right to buy scheme or a mansion in Surrey, you are likely to have to sell your home if you need residential care, not other sorts of care. But if you simplify things down to selling houses and the funding mechanism, to some degree it misses the point. The care system, which is about people, is in crisis. It has understaffing, years of underfunding, and it needs to be fixed. So the things we need to see is, will there be investment now in the system? Will the staffing problems be fixed? And what is the vision for the future of this service, which looks after not just people over the age of 65, but many younger adults? And it should be what they say it should be about quality of life and keeping people out of hospital.
Alison, thank you. Alison Holt reporting there. The Taliban say they've seized Panjshir province, which is the only part of Afghanistan not under their control. A spokesman said that no civilians had been killed in days of heavy fighting against resistance forces. Leaders of the movement opposing the Taliban deny that they've been defeated and say they still have a presence in the province. Our South Asia correspondent Yogita Limai reports.
We're raising the white flag in the provincial headquarters of Panjshir, Taliban fighters said in a video released by the group. They claim to have conquered the final stronghold of opposition, and with it, all of Afghanistan. At a press conference in Kabul, the group declared victory. We tried our best to resolve the issue in Panjshir through negotiations, but it didn't work, spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said. We couldn't accept a power island in Afghanistan. We had to use force. The Panjshir Valley lies to Kabul's northeast. It has a narrow entrance and its terrain offers natural protection. Attacked several times during Afghanistan's long history of violence, its defenders have always held fort. And even now those resisting Taliban control say it hasn't been fully captured so far.
We are present throughout Panjshir at the moment. Panjshir is in a small province or valley. Panjshir has many semi-valleys from the southern part up to the northern part of the valley. Right now, the Taliban are only in a few locations. They are facing difficulties. Our forces are resisting. Our forces are defending their people, their honor, their home, and their values.
Ahmad Massoud, one of the leaders of the resistance, has released a voice message blaming the international community for legitimizing the Taliban. Amrullah Saleh, Afghanistan's former vice president, was the other man leading the movement. A few days ago, he'd sent the BBC this clip saying he was in Panjshir. His whereabouts are now unknown. Yogita Lemay for BBC News.
Correspondent Sikandar Kamani is in Kabul for us. Sikandar, disputes then over what's going on in Panjshir, and no news yet of the Taliban forming a government.
Yes, that's right. It's been more than 3 weeks since the Taliban took over Kabul, and they're yet to establish a new government. First, we were told that they were waiting for the final American troops to leave the country. That was a few days ago. Then we were told they were waiting to resolve the situation in Panjshir. Well, that's now happened, it appears. One source is telling me that we could get an announcement by the end of this week, but it's not yet clear if that will happen or not. There's been some suggestion that the delays are also because of internal rivalries and debates within the Taliban about who exactly is going to be appointed to what position. Now, the man who's widely expected to be in overall control of the country, whatever form of government exactly emerges, is the supreme leader of the Taliban, Mullah Haibatullah. The problem is he's always been very elusive. We've seen no public appearances, no videos released by him, even since the Taliban took over the country. And that's led to some speculation that he could be dead. Zabihullah Mujahid, the Taliban spokesman, at a news conference today, though, saying that's not true and that we will see him soon. The formation of this new government really is key because at the moment Afghans are living through what feels like a state of limbo. No one's exactly sure what the future will look like, what kind of rules and laws exactly the Taliban want to implement, and how willing they are to share power with any other political factions.
Thank you very much. Sikandar Kamani there in Kabul. Tony Blair has called on leading world powers to unite to develop a strategy to counter Islamist extremism. In a speech, the former Prime Minister said radical Islam still presented a security threat to the world. He said following the COVID pandemic, bioterror possibilities were no longer science fiction and the world would be wise to prepare for their use by extremist terror groups. Disturbing reports of sexual abuse of children by other children almost doubled in the 2 years up to 2019, according to police figures obtained by BBC Panorama. Yearly reports show the cases have risen to between 15 and 16,000, with some of the alleged perpetrators aged just 10 or younger. Daniela Ralph reports.
The new figures paint a picture of a toxic sexual culture being experienced by some young people, where both perpetrators and victims are under 18, with some even aged 10 or under, and when 90% of the victims are girls. Jasmine met her first boyfriend on social media. From the start of the relationship, he asked her for naked photos. It progressed to him filming them in bed together.
I didn't want to do it. It wasn't something I felt comfortable doing. And me saying no wasn't enough either. Like there was no no. He would keep pushing it, even if I said no.
Earlier this year, the website Everyone's Invited was set up for people to publish anonymous accounts of abuse they say they suffered. Over the past year, there have been more than 50,000 posts on the site. For those helping teenagers navigate intimate relationships, the situation is increasingly complex.
The majority of girls report things like unwanted touching, groping, being pressured and pestered to send nudes, that is so frequent, it's become a part of everyday life to the point where they wouldn't bother reporting it because it just feels like it's a normal part of the day.
So what is the legal age of consent? Does anybody in the classroom know what the legal age of consent is? That ability to say yes or no. So we've got freedom as a really important option here.
At Grace Academy in Solihull, the government's new mandatory sex education curriculum is being taught and discussed. The school also runs projects focused on the power of social media to promote abusive sexual behaviour.
So accessible. If you've got a phone, if you've got a laptop, if you've got whatever, you've got access to whatever you want, and some of that can be extreme. And then if it's seen, well, everybody's doing it because it would appear that it's online. If it's online, it must be okay. It is part of the normalisation.
It is an enormous challenge, protecting children from each other and the pressures in wider society. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
And you can watch Panorama's Who's Protecting Our Kids with Mariella Frostrup, and that's tonight at 7:35 on BBC One. And details of organisations offering information and support with sexual abuse are available at bbc.co.uk/action line, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information, and that's on 0800 077 077.
Thank you for being with us. Good night.
The time is 1:15. Our top story this lunchtime. The Prime Minister faces a backlash from his own MPs over plans to raise national insurance to pay for social care reforms in England. And coming up, 4 years after restorations began, Big Ben gets its hands back.
Coming up in sport in the next 15 minutes on the BBC News channel, we'll have the latest from the Oval as England lose a wicket in pursuit of 368 runs to go one up in the Test series against India.
Now it's back to school for millions of pupils in England and Wales this week amid fears that the return could lead to a spike in COVID cases. Rules on class bubbles and on older pupils wearing face masks have been dropped, but scientists have warned of the possibility of a rapid rise in COVID cases without such restrictions. Last week, the Vaccination Authority ruled there was no clinical need for jabs for healthy 12 to 15-year-olds, and teaching unions are keen that restrictions be brought back if necessary. While Martine Croxall is at the North Shore Academy in Stockton-on-Tees for us now. Martine.
Reeta, thank you very much. Yes, we're spending the day here at North Shore Academy talking about the impact that COVID has had on education and the adaptations that schools like this are having to make because the virus is still in the community. In a moment, we'll be speaking to 2 Year 11 students who are taking their GCSEs this year and also a member of the trust that runs this academy. But first, let's take a look at the wider picture that schools are facing in this report from our education correspondent, Sean Dilley.
Please be attentive, have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you later in the day, OK?
It was billed as the most normal school year since before the pandemic. But even before some English and Welsh students have taken their seats in class, more uncertainty about whether 12 to 15-year-olds will be routinely offered the vaccine. That question has been hotly debated here at the North Shore Academy in Stockton-on-Tees.
I would definitely get the vaccine because we've been one of the countries fortunate enough to obviously have vaccines, and we should take that and use the advantage.
I think I would, to save people, yeah, I think I would.
The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation told UK governments they would not on health grounds alone be recommending all 12 to 15-year-olds are offered the jab. Instead, chief medical officers across the 4 nations are being asked to review the scientists' advice and decide on a wider set of criteria whether to overrule them.
I think many of the school and college leaders who I represent will have been disappointed in the decision by JCVI, not because they are fans of vaccination, but we know that vaccination, in the absence of other control measures apart from ventilation, are going to be very important in getting away from that terrible disruption that so many young people experienced over the past year.
The JCVI's decision was finely balanced. They considered the individual health benefits and took account of the potential for extremely rare heart complications. Authorities in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are monitoring the situation closely in Scotland, where schools returned in the middle of August. Some experts are linking this with a sharp rise in COVID infections. In England, cases have remained steady throughout August, but the rate of infection among 5 to 15-year-olds to the end of the month was 30 times higher compared with the same time last year.
Everybody is working really hard to keep children safe and to be very alert for any rises and act if there are any rises. I've been in schools right through summer and actually right through COVID. I was in schools myself until March as a head teacher and CEO. And I know that everyone's working really hard to make this return safe.
The UK government has pledged to give English school children the most normal classroom experience possible. The decision on whether to offer vaccinations to all 12 to 15-year-olds could shape what this year's education looks like in reality. Sean Dilley, BBC News.
It's lunchtime here. You can hear the chatter downstairs of everyone having something to eat. This is a relief to so many people that everyone's back in the building after these halls and classrooms being so quiet for so many months. Joining us is Jane Wilson, who's the Deputy CEO of the Northern Education Trust, which runs this academy along with 20 others, and also two Year 11 students, Tyler Holliday and Ella Place. Big year for both of you. How relieved are you to be back in school instead of having to do learning online, Ella?
I feel like it's easier to catch up on work when we're inside instead of online, because it's harder because you don't have the teacher in front of you to help you.
So you're glad to be back amongst all of your friends as well. Tyler, how much catching up do you think everyone's going to need to do? Because there is a lot that you can't do so easily online.
Well, the teachers during the lockdown were fantastic, and anything you needed to know, they'd give you an answer to, any sort of question or anything like that.
Big exams though this year.
Yeah.
Are you glad you're going to be doing exams, or would you rather it were assessments?
Exams would be better to do because they've got the results there.
Yeah, concrete results. Ringing endorsement there, Jane, of how everybody coped online. But what are the adaptations you've had to make for this term? Because you've got running a test centre here, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. So we've got test centres still going in our secondary academies, and they're working brilliant. We're well used to running those now, so that's not been a problem. It's business as usual, really. We're still avoiding large gatherings, so whole school assemblies, getting everybody together. But we've got phases and teaching groups having assemblies. So to all intents and purposes, it feels very, very normal, which is absolutely lovely.
This school does serve an underprivileged community.
Yes.
You've got quite a few children here who are entitled to free school meals. Yes. What do you feel that this school needs in terms of extra support and resources to help that recovery we're hearing from the government is going to be necessary?
The government have been really good in coming forward with resources. We've made really good use of the money that has been forthcoming from the government for catch-up already. We've got really good catch-up plans in place.
Such as?
So we've done masterclasses for students. They'll continue this year, so that's children right across the trust coming together for lessons online. Catch-up in terms of one-to-one tutor groups for students, small group work. Our children will get the best we can possibly do to make sure they're ready for those exams in the summer.
Jane, Tyler, Ella, thank you very much for talking to us. Not quite a normal school year. As we can hear, there are lots and lots of things that are still being considered to keep everybody safe, but hopefully far better than it's been for the last 18 months.
Martine, many thanks. A court in Belarus has jailed two leading opposition figures. Protest organiser Maria Kaleshnikova was found guilty of extremism and plotting to seize power and was jailed for 11 years, while lawyer Maxim Znak received 10 years. Ms. Kaleshnikova backed the opposition leader in last year's presidential election and also led protests against President Alexander Lukashenko. Conjoined twins from Israel have made eye contact with each other for the first time after being separated. The one-year-old sisters underwent a 12-hour operation that took months of preparation and involved dozens of experts. Mark Lebel reports.
Sisters, face to face for the first time, after surviving a miraculous marathon operation. Conjoined at the back of their heads from birth a year ago, separation surgery was meticulously planned between major blood vessels in their heads. A very delicate task. One bleed could be catastrophic.
Of course, after all the preparations and all the models we have built in a designated surgery room, we specifically prepared for this thing with a surgical theatre and VR of the twins and with a 3D model we prepared in advance.
Where the two were attached, there was no skin and skull, so doctors needed the babies to essentially grow more skin. Inflatable silicone bags were inserted into their heads and gently expanded to stretch their skin slowly. This meant that when doctors reconstructed their skulls after the separation, they had excess skin, which they could use to seal their new heads.
We're just finishing the twins' separation procedure. It has gone extremely well. I'm delighted how well the whole team's done. It's an excellent team here, and it's been a real pleasure to be a part of it.
Medics say this type of surgery, a first for Israel, has only ever happened 20 times worldwide. Separating them so young, they say there is now a high chance they will live normal lives, already breathing and eating on their own. There is rehabilitation for their physical and cognitive development planned, which will no doubt be spurred on by these remarkable sisters' own determination to succeed. Mark Lobel, BBC News.
The storage limits for frozen eggs, sperm and embryos could rise to a maximum of 55 years under government plans to give people greater choice over when to start a family. Ministers have proposed that the statutory storage limits should increase from 10 years across the UK. The changes would need parliamentary approval. It's the last day of the fourth Test match between England and India at the Oval. In a finely balanced and nail-biting match, anything could happen. And at lunch, England were 131 for 2, chasing a record 368 for victory. Joe Wilson has been watching the action.
Look into my eyes. We've got this. Just 10 wickets to take and the whole day. Thus was India's perspective. England saw it differently. A long march towards 368, not steps but runs. 4 there for Rory Burns. Experience told you England's task was mountainous. Who needs experience when you can make your own? Optimism. There's Burns again. He'll deal with that. On his way to a 50. It was just a question of concentration until... a delivery he couldn't help but edge to the wicketkeeper. England had 100 runs, but India had their first success. We're off. A match can last 5 days and fortunes will switch in a second. That's the beauty of it. Hasib Hamid lost composure, gave Mohammad Siraj a catch. What? Oh my goodness, he's dropped it. So many reactions, but let's see the batsmen's. Well, everyone needs a bit of luck. But this misfortune seemed self-inflicted. A risky run. David Malan reacting, sprinting, stretching, but not there. Run out. 131 for 2 at lunch after a morning that still leaves you wondering. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
A 3-year-old boy who went missing in the Australian bush 4 days ago has been found alive. Anthony A.J. Elfalak was discovered after police helicopter pilots spotted him in amongst trees in a deep gully in New South Wales. AJ was found drinking water from a creek around half a kilometre from his home. His father said his son had some ant bites and scrapes to his legs, but was in reasonably good shape, and that his rescue was a miracle. The original hands from Big Ben's clock face are to be returned to the Elizabeth Tower in London after 3 years of conservation work. Experts have painted them to match the original Prussian blue colour scheme. Tim Muffet has been to meet the team behind the £80 million restoration project.
Countdown to completion. One of the biggest restoration jobs ever undertaken on a landmark British building is approaching the finish line.
Good to see you, Ian.
And you.
What is it you're doing here?
We're servicing the rollers. This is one of the bits that we couldn't actually get to and service while the minute hands were on.
If you're a clock mechanic, this is like the Champions League and the World Cup rolled into one, I'd imagine, this project.
Working on this clock will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually have taken it all to pieces, putting it back together again and then carry on looking after it for a few more years, that's just going to be fantastic.
One of the most striking things you notice is the colour of the clock faces. For many years, the minute demarcations, the numbers and the clock hands were painted black. But during the refurbishment, as many layers of paint were stripped away, it became clear that they were originally this shade of blue. It's called Prussian blue, and that is what they've been repainted in.
This restoration project was originally budgeted at £29 million. The total bill is now set to exceed £80 million.
As you peel off the layers of this building, you find more and more that needs to be done. When we're taking out one piece of stone, adjacent stones often needed to be replaced. It's one of those things, until you can get up close to it, it's very difficult to see the scope of repair.
With the clock mechanism out of action, a computerised system has meant that on special occasions, Big Ben has still been struck.
We're standing in the belfry of the Elizabeth Tower, and it was specially constructed so that the chiming bells for the 4 quarters could be heard right across London.
There's one piece of damage here that's been deliberately left alone. This crack appeared when Big Ben was struck during a test in 1858. The hammer was too heavy, but it gives the bell its unique tone.
This is London.
It should be E, the note E, but it does give it a slightly flat sound, a very serious sound, in fact.
So that's one bit of repairing you didn't want to do?
That's right, yes. No change to the bell whatsoever, because it's become the familiar note.
A much-loved building, largely hidden for the past few years, slowly revealing itself once more. Tim Muffet, BBC News.
Time for a look at the weather now. Here's Darren Bett.
Thank you, Reeta. It's a warmer day for us today. Temperatures have been rising rapidly across southern parts of England, already reached 26 degrees here in Bournemouth. And over the next few days, temperatures will continue to rise. Always going to be hotter across England and Wales in the sunshine. And then from late Wednesday onwards, things change again. We've got the threat of some thundery rain and temperatures will start to drop. That breakdown in the weather is eventually going to come courtesy of that area of low pressure. But it's not reached us just yet. And ahead of that, we've got more of a southeasterly breeze developing, and it's that will bring the heat in from continental Europe. So temperatures are higher today. We're looking at 27, 28 degrees across some parts of England and into Wales, and the low 20s across Scotland and Northern Ireland, even though there's more cloud around here, and there's still a few spots of drizzle here and there, particularly across western parts of Scotland. But we're getting more sunshine breaking out across a good part of England and Wales, where it'll be a lovely sunny end to the day. Further north, though, there will be more cloud overnight tonight, and still a bit of dampness in western Scotland, and there's a bit of fog actually through the Irish Sea that could develop into the northwest of England, the northwest Midlands as well overnight, but quite a warm night. Temperatures down to 12 to 15 degrees. And tomorrow we could see temperatures reaching 30 degrees. That'll please some people. It's not going to please everybody, mind you. We didn't reach 30 degrees at all last month. Last time we had 30 degrees was on the 23rd of July, and that was in Northern Ireland. We start with some mist and fog, though, across some parts of England tomorrow. That will burn off in the morning. Sunshine develops widely in England and Wales. And after a cloudy start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, we should get some sunshine developing here. And that will give the temperatures a boost into the low to mid-20s. But it's really across England and Wales that we'll see those temperatures reaching 30 degrees, more likely through the Midlands to the southeast of England. And still a lot of heat around on Wednesday as well. But we see signs of change, particularly towards the southwest of England and Wales, perhaps Northern Ireland, an increasing risk of catching some heavy and thundery downpours. But with the sunshine moving further north into Scotland, temperatures are going to be higher here, 26, possibly 27 degrees. And further east across England, ahead of those thundery showers, temperatures will be close to 30 degrees. But look what happens to those showers. They develop and push their way northwards and eastwards overnight, continuing northwards into Scotland on Thursday. Some heavy bursts of rain for Northern Ireland still, and some heavy showers coming into England and Wales. So temperatures won't be as high on Thursday. It's still quite warm for the time of year, 24 or 25 in eastern parts of England. Reeta.
Thank you, Darren. And that is all from BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.